Welcome back to The Price of Business. I am your host, Kevin Price, talking to you about you and your business. Continuing my conversation with my friend Brian Domitrovic, and economic historian and great friend of this program, and always brings lots of insight to the show. Brian, you got exciting news that you shared with us last time you were on the program. I wanted to cover that a little bit. I wanted to let the listener know about it because I think it's kind of a cool thing to see a university do it. So go ahead and explain what it is before I jump into my thoughts about that with you.
Sure. So I'm at Sam Houston State right now, but next year I'll be on sabbatical. I've been named the visiting scholar in conservative thought and policy at the University of Colorado, Boulder. And several years ago, the University of Colorado, Boulder said, we want to start a program where conservatives are really welcome on these famously liberal campuses. And then I'll be the third installment of the visiting professor in that tradition.
Yeah, very good. And I did a little research this the last time you were on. It appears they've only done it a couple of years now. It's a relatively new thing. Talk about that.
Yeah, the first one is Steve Hayward, the great biographer of Reagan and critic of the Environmental Protection Agency at Pepperdine. He was the first visiting scholar, and now Brad Berzer is the current occupant from Hillsdale College, and it's been a phenomenal success. In particular, all the kind of progressive faculty at Boulder has really enjoyed the deep perspective on conservatism that these scholars have provided. They'd never really heard that before, and they found they were scholars for it. So I'm really looking forward to going there. It'll be a kind of a prominent position. I'll bring in a lot of people to do some speaking from all over the country. And I'll also release my book with Larry Kudlow on the JFK tax cut next year.
Interesting. So when you go, kind of give me the total scope of what your involvement will be. Obviously, you'll be involved with writing. I'm sure you'll be teaching seminars and that type of thing. But it sounds like you're going to have events as well. Talk a little bit about the events.
Yeah, well, one of the main objectives will be to figure out, this is a big University of Colorado and broader program, to figure out how to get serious conservatives into the center of the academy more and more. So I'll be talking with a lot of people, including donors, who want to make this happen, not just at Colorado, but elsewhere. And then the other events we'll hold is just bringing in the best intellectual conservatives from around the country to demonstrate the kind of dazzling array of the entire conservative movement right there in the kind of heart of the progressive university.
Interesting. So the donors, are they donors of the university, or are they conservative donors that are interested in getting that message into university, or a little of both?
Well, in Colorado in particular, and I guess maybe this is the case in Texas, if you, say, consider Texas with respect to UT Austin, Colorado has a very kind of conservative population, especially that population that is well off. But yet the university is pretty liberal. And by the way, the university has a lot of imports. A lot of Californians go to the University of Colorado, kind of granola Californians. And so there's a kind of strange relationship. And the conservative entrepreneurs would like to see more of their own tradition represented. But then also there's a lot of national interest in what Colorado's doing.
Yeah, interesting. Talking to Brian Domitrovic. Are there other universities that have something like this?
Well, people are really watching the Colorado experiment. I mean, George Mason University is one place where conservatives have really kind of found a major landing spot, particularly in the economics department. They had the great Nobel laureate James Buchanan. There are a few other places, okay, Pepperdine, but Colorado is the first one to make a big experiment.
Interesting. And I think that's obviously that's refreshing. It's certainly, I don't see it as threatening to the prevailing worldview that's going to be in a campus like that. But it's also great to see a place where people with a different worldview will be able to gravitate towards. It'd be excellent if it evolved into maybe even like special student areas where students can hang out with that, or beyond. Like when I was in college, I was the leader of Young Conservatives of Texas. But it was very part of it, kind of an ad hoc type of thing. And I went to Abilene Christian University, which fortunately was probably more conservative than Pepperdine. But nonetheless, it'd be great to create even a place of camaraderie and networking beyond mere academic experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Right now, students kind of have to poke around, wondering, reading conservative books under the covers with flashlights. And the strange thing is, it's the progressive left faculty who finds out, wait a minute, this stuff is really interesting. Let's bring these people in. And then the students kind of come out of their shells. Yeah, why don't we talk about this? So American universities really have missed an opportunity over about the last 30, 40, 50 years in shutting out conservatives. They have really attenuated the discourse in universities, and that's not what those institutions are supposed to be doing.
Yeah. I'm curious about whether or not your views have evolved much. You know, as someone, I consider myself really for decades a so-called what Reagan would call three-legged stool conservative. I really am socially conservative. I am very free market oriented, and I believe in national security. But I got to tell you, over time, I've become more and more libertarian in my perspective. I don't trust government in general. The government that is trying to do nation building worldwide has a $20 trillion national debt. I'm not sure if they've got much to export. I'm not sure if military is a means to do that. So I'm finding myself more and more libertarian over time. Do you find yourself more aligned ideologically with libertarians than you do conservatives, or and you use the language of conservatism because it is such a much larger population to draw from, or how would you describe yourself in that way?
Kevin, I believe I've followed along pretty much the same path. I think there were some big mistakes under the aegis of the Reagan administration in the 1980s, and one of them certainly was the rise of the police state and the drug war. Conservatives, by nature, must be interested in seeing the reduction of the size of the state. We have not seen that when it comes to policing in the drug war, and it's time to see it. The other thing I've been concerned about is I've really started to take the Laffer curve even more seriously than I ever have. I mean, the Laffer curve says if you cut tax rates, you're going to increase tax revenues. Well, that's scary. If you increase tax revenues, that means the state can be increased. That means you have to have constant tax cuts after tax cuts after tax cuts to keep the government in check. And by the way, Reagan did that.
That's interesting.
He cut taxes in 1981. The economy boomed so much, he cut taxes again in 1986, even more than he did in 1981. The tragedy of the first Bush administration is that he did not continue that logic so that we had tax cuts permanently.
So initial tax cuts are done to stimulate the economy. Future tax cuts are done to curtail government's ability to be funded.
Exactly. Precisely.
Oh, that's brilliant. That is absolutely brilliant. Yeah, I think that's absolutely true, and that's the most pernicious part of it all is what government will do with that money. Now it seems like on the left, at least, there's very little interest in raising revenue. The primary interests seem to be much more social engineering oriented, in my opinion.
Yeah, I've been looking at Charles Murray's new book. I mean, he makes a very interesting point. He says, look, the supply-side revolution was really successful in terms of letting the government know that we want good monetary policy and good tax policy. So they know there's vigilance on that, on monetary and tax policy. So therefore, they went after regulation. The government got really big in terms of regulation. And Murray's like, what we have to do now is figure out how to tame that beast. We've sort of figured out, even though there's a lot of work to do, how to tame monetary and fiscal policy, but now how to tame regulatory policy, and that's the agenda for the 21st century.
Just finished reading Charles Murray's book. He was on my show last week, and I'm a huge fan. In fact, I'm almost kind of like a teenager with a boy band when I'm around talking to Charles Murray. I'm such a geek around him, and his new book is so cool because, libertarians don't usually offer much solutions. They're really good at figuring out problems, but they're not much on offering solutions. His new book does just that. It's almost like a handbook.
No, I mean, that's a brilliant idea. I mean, he has helped me think of government more and more, I'm afraid, as a disease, as a kind of a Darwinian animal. It tries to figure out what the weak spots are in the private economy so that it might grow and grow and grow. And its regulatory thing has turned out to be a gold mine for the government. That's how we can grow. And right, he doesn't just diagnose. He says, let's come up with this fund. Let's make it regular in all the professions, and let's stand up to government lawsuits. And I think it's a brilliant idea.
Yeah, he's awesome. And so are you. I'm really glad you're on our side as well. And, Brian, I gave out a lot of websites. I don't usually like to do that because that only confuses people. Where would you suggest people go to learn more?
I would say my Forbes.com website.
Yeah, just go to Forbes.com, put in Brian Domitrovic. You're going to love the content. I enjoy it and really enjoy having you on. I'm glad there are such things as telephones with you being gone to Colorado because we're still going to want to get you on next year.
Oh, sure. I'd love to.
All right. Have a great rest of your day, sir.
Great, Kevin. See you.
When we come back, much more for you. I do want to remind you, best content here shows up over there at usdailyreview.com, and you're listening to The Price of Business.
Georgia was a man.